Hello, Hey Boomer listeners. My name is Wendy Green, and I am your host for Hey Boomer. And wherever you are listening from, welcome. Very happy to have you here. And happy Valentine's Day. Our guests today are Brad and Josselyn Majors, and I was just having the most delightful conversation with them, so I'm looking forward to bringing them on. But what we're going to be talking about is the life of an expat. So when you make that decision, or what goes into that decision to go and live overseas in retirement, is the focus of today's conversation. And it's an interesting conversation because it's something that many of us consider, and it's becoming a fairly popular consideration for people in retirement because we hear that retiring overseas is actually less expensive than retiring in the United States. Another question that we'll explore with Brad and Josselyn. But when I had looked into it, I had thought about either Costa Rica or Uruguay as a place to retire overseas. And this weekend, I was visiting with my daughter and her family because my daughter is a Valentine baby. Happy birthday to my sweet daughter. And I brought up the subject. I said, what would you think if I decided to retire to Uruguay? And she kind of stopped and gave me this like, what are you talking about? Look. And then she said, well, I guess we wouldn't see much of you. So I think that for me would be the hardest part about making a decision to retire overseas because, now that I have 4 grandchildren, it is my joy to be close enough to them that I can go to their concerts and their shows and watch them play soccer and all of that. But you never know, right? Never say never. Retiring overseas is always an interesting and exotic option. Hello to all of you who joined so far, Anne and Doris and Elizabeth and David. It's good to see you. Certainly love seeing all of you stop in and say hi. As you know, I always like to do my never too old stories, so I have a couple of really interesting ones for you today, I think. The first one is about a woman named Shelley Halstead, and she was a corporate attorney, but Shelley didn't feel like she had really found her calling. And in her 50s, she got the idea to help women renovate crumbling row houses in Baltimore that she felt she had found her true work. She is the founder and executive director of Black Women Build Baltimore. And she did not come to this project unprepared. She had experience as a carpenter before she actually went to law school. And she also had a passion for helping communities. And the women in this program work for 4 months, rehabilitating structures that were originally marked for demolition. And along the way, they learn carpentry, electrical skills, and plumbing, as well as personal finance. And since 2019, now you have to understand there has been a pandemic, right? But since 2019, they have completed 7 houses with the goal of completing 6 more houses every year. So good for Shelley and good for the women in Baltimore. The next never too old story is about a woman named Marianne Alda. And in the 80s, Marianne played a successful African-American attorney on the soap opera The Edge of Night. Do y'all remember The Edge of Night? That was like the only soap opera that I ever watched. And of course, I was a teenager then. But anyway, she had been on numerous other TV dramas until she turned 50. And that is when the calls stopped. And her agent suggested that she gain 20 pounds so that she could do character roles. So she decided to leave acting at that point and study to become a hypnotherapist. And in her work as a hypnotherapist with her women clients, she realized that women had been hypnotized into believing that we lose value and sexual currency over 50. And her response to that was, oh, hell no. She wasn't going to give up her career that she loved. So she got back into acting. And what she did was she reinvented herself as a theater actress and a comedian. So I am inspired by the stories that I keep finding and by the stories of these two women that we are never too old to find our place and to reinvent ourselves. And if you know anybody who is considering the expat lifestyle, reach out to them now and invite them to join this show so that they don't miss a moment of this. It's going to be fun and informative and interesting. And I am going to bring on Jocelyn and Brad now to say hi to all of you. Hey, Jocelyn and Brad.
Howdy.
Hi.
From the Azores. Don't you love technology that we can do this from the Azores?
Really?
It's so cool. So let me tell them briefly about each of you. I have shortened some of these bios, but Jocelyn was born in Naples, Italy, where her father was stationed at the NATO military command base. And as part of a U.S. Air Force family, she and her family lived in many places, eventually settling in Sacramento, California, where Jocelyn graduated from high school and the University of California at Berkeley in pre-law. Following her graduation, Jocelyn moved to South Africa and worked as a legal aid representative in the fight against apartheid. And she lived there for 10 years, continuing her studies in accounting at the University of Cape Town and launching her career in finance there. She moved to Greenville in 1987 and worked as an accountant with several companies before forming Crunch Accounting in 2016, where she functioned as an outsourced chief financial officer to Pendleton Place, which is a nonprofit organization working to keep children safe and support families in crisis. So that's Joss. Brad grew up in Aiken, South Carolina. And after college and graduate business school at the University of Georgia, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Brad moved to New York and joined the country's oldest advertising agency, and thus began a 38-year love affair with helping sell products, services, and ideas. During that time, Brad worked for large international ad agencies, small and medium-sized agencies. He operated his own marketing consultancy, worked for the state of South Carolina as director of marketing at Greenville Technical College, and closed his marketing career as vice president of marketing and development at Goodwill Industries in the upstate and Midlands of South Carolina. Brad also plays jazz and blues music with Deep Dish Dixieland in Greenville and I Got the Blues in the Azores. And Brad and Jocelyn have two adult sons, Callum and Dominic. And I thank you guys for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when we spoke, Brad, originally about the show, I was asking you about the transition from these great careers that you both had to retirement and what that experience was like. So I'd like to start there, and then we'll get into the whole expat life.
Sure. Well, Jocelyn retired first. Would you like to talk about that? No? Okay. Well, I'll lead. You know, I have found retirement. I love many aspects of retirement, but I did really have to struggle a little bit to find my sea legs, and I guess that I'm sort of inclined to plan my day the day before, you know, good to-do list, and you know, but what I found is there's not that much to do. I mean, there's plenty of fun things to do, but in terms of things that you need to accomplish, there's not quite so many things to do. And sometimes I struggle with the pace of that. And in a lot of ways, I've struggled a lot of my career when I left New York, because things just moved at such a pace that I have kind of traditionally been known as the person who on the team that was impatient to see things get done. And I think when I got to Goodwill, that I found an organization that was moving as fast as I wanted to. So I had a particularly good 8 years working at Goodwill, right on Haywood Road. But I think there's been a little bit of a struggle for me in retirement, and I'm getting better at it, especially since I have the hobby of music.
And that is so common, Brad, that people don't know how to live without that organized, scheduled life, or without accountability. Start to feel like there's not a meaning or purpose to their day. So yeah, that's not unusual. So thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah, it was it's a double whammy, retiring and then moving overseas, a completely different experience. So we did have a learning curve. Brad was the fellow who first thought about retiring sooner than we had planned. We both thought, oh, we'll work till we die. We love working and financial security. But we reached a point several years ago, I guess in 2016, that he started thinking about retiring a little bit earlier. And I was nervous because, financially, can we afford to do this? And interestingly, we, you see in the newspaper advertisements for Social Security, these seminars in a hotel conference room, and I didn't want to do that. I thought they would not be legitimate. We did go to one, and it was legitimate, and the people who ran it were very nice. And we started looking at the numbers and crunching the numbers, and we actually met with them, and they, for no charge, plugged our information, all our financial data into the computer projection. And it was at that point in time that I realized we actually do have enough to retire sooner than we had planned and be comfortable. And it was a big learning curve. For example, we thought we would always take our Social Security as late as possible. And when we saw the numbers in the model, we didn't need to take it that late. We could take it sooner. So that was, for the beginning, for me, the idea of retiring became more comfortable as soon as I realized that we could have a comfortable life now. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah. So what was the process that you went through when you started thinking about not just the financial side of it, but you thought you wanted to live overseas somewhere? What was the process you went through?
Well, initially, and I was surprised because I've lived overseas a lot, and Brad has traveled extensively, but he's never lived overseas. And he just somehow, I think he saw something, I don't know, on Facebook, and he broached the idea, and he became very interested. So we started doing research, and I'm an accountant, so I had the spreadsheet, countries, cost of living, healthcare, ease of travel back to the U.S., safety, medical care, all of those things. And we put those all together, and we narrowed it down to a couple of places that interested us. And eventually, after visiting Nicaragua and Portugal, Portugal was a no-brainer. We just, it was pretty methodical, and we read a lot. And you did most of the legwork on that. Yeah. Well, it was fun.
I'll say that Joss was the methodical one, and I'm the one shooting from the hip, and that's sort of the story of our marriage is I'm the marketing guy. It's going to be great. I know we're going to love it. It's going to be great. And Joss is like, well, I think we will, but let's talk about a few issues, So when we, it's kind of cute because we went to Nicaragua and did a tour for 10 days, and we loved Nicaragua. And about 2 months after we got back, they started having all the problems, the violence, and that was just, you would not have thought so if you were down there and met the people. But I think it's kind of indicative of the leadership of that country. When we started looking at Portugal, it was I've told this story a number of times, but we landed in Lisbon, and what we were going to do was spend about a week traveling all around the mainland, and then we were going to end our trip with 5 days on the Azores because our good friend Mario Dave Carvalho, who is Jane Robleau's husband, and grew up here until the age of 9, and told us the Azores was a great place to be. So when we landed in Lisbon, we were there about 2 days, and I said, "Hey, this is great. I could really live here. I could live here." And of course, Jocelyn said, "Well, I think it's a nice city too, but we've got a lot of places to look at." I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "We're going to the Algarve tomorrow, so we'll see what you think of that." Now, the Algarve is right in the southern area of the mainland of Portugal. It has a lot of Brits living there. The Brits discovered it many years ago due to the weather, and a lot of them moved there. So we got down to the Algarve, and of course, the night after we woke up, I said, "Wow, I could live here. This is a great place." Jocelyn said, "Well, we're going to Porto tomorrow. Let's see what you think of Porto." So same thing in Porto. I'm all over that, and she's like the measured one. "Yeah, we can think about Porto. It's very nice." We thought Lisbon felt a lot like New York, and Porto was a lot like San Francisco. That was Jocelyn's analogy. So we came on down to the Silver Coast and finally came back to Lisbon. So I had already picked out 5 or 6 cities that I wanted to move to. And so we got on the plane and we flew to the Azores, which is about a 2-hour and 15-minute flight. I mean, I was telling someone that I lived off the coast of Portugal, and they felt like 12 miles. No, we live in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
But when we got here, Jocelyn looked on the 3rd day, we were stopped at this, what's called a Miradura, which is kind of a scenic area where you can get out and look. And we got back in the car, and Jocelyn looked at me and said, "I can live here." And that was the first time that she had really, something moved her about this place that it moved me too, but I liked every place. And she had managed to filter through a lot of things and come to that. And so we had, on our flight back, we had, talked about, I liked a lot of things, and there are a lot of similarities in the mainland and here, and there are a lot of differences too. So that was kind of how it went.
Yeah, so that's funny, and it's nice that Jocelyn finally found the place that fit her too. So there's so many questions to ask about, moving from everything we know, like the grocery stores and the language and driving and, driver's license and all. So, how would you recommend going about approaching all of those different realities?
Well, living in Portugal and the Azores it depends what foreign country someone chooses. But here, we're really fortunate that a lot of folks on the island do speak English. And after we lived here for about 1 year, our ear became accustomed because the language is beautiful, but it's in the States we hear more Spanish, for example. But if we ever really need somebody to speak English, that people are so kind, they say, wait a minute, and they run around the corner and find somebody they know speaks English who will help us. Here, we've been just so lucky because people are friendly and helpful. Some other countries, I think, the local people don't like Americans and expats, but here we've been welcomed with open arms. Brad had never lived overseas, I had, and so there are some, when we first moved here, I guess the 2 things we missed were, aside from family and friends, Costco and ethnic food. And here they have fantastic food. When we eat fish in restaurants, and it's very well priced, and it's from the ocean that morning or a few hours earlier. It's a garden, it's a fruit and vegetable basket. Everything is fresh here. So we're able to have a much healthier diet here more easily. When we were working, of course, it was what's easy, what's convenient, what's expedient. Here we have more time to go to the local market. Our refrigerator isn't as big in the States, so we shop more frequently. So learning some of those habits has been, well, it's great because the pace of life is slower. We can get everything we need here, and we've only ordered something online once in the 3 years that we've lived here, actually twice, his musical instrument. So we can get everything here. I mean, many things are less expensive. Fruit, vegetables, food is much less expensive. Wine is less expensive.
Ooh,
Oh yeah,
that's
if you spend €4 at the supermarket, you were, and say to go to a dinner party, you were taking an impressive bottle of wine for €4,
Yes,
which
yes.
which would be about $4.60.
Yes.
So
And some things are more expensive. For example, electronic goods are more expensive. Automobiles, gasoline, but they kind of balance out. Our internet and cell phones are much less expensive because the local market could not support a $200 a month cell phone bill. I mean, people here don't earn as much.
yeah.
So yeah, you were
Wow.
asking about cost. However, we do travel back and forth, so that to the States to visit family, and that's more expensive. What
Yeah,
do you
you'd
think
have to
about
factor that in when you looked at your finances. I'm sure you
Yes,
factored
yeah.
that in.
yes, we did.
And so, have you learned Portuguese, or are you learning Portuguese?
I took a class I love languages, and I would like to speak Portuguese. I took a class at the university the first year we lived here. I know more book. I can read and write. I understand quite a bit when people speak, but I'm always shy to speak. But when we're in our town that we live in now, we're not in the big city. A lot of people don't understand or speak English, so I guess I understand more and can speak better than I think because we communicate really well. I mean, some sign language, but yeah, I'm learning and I'm getting better. And Brad, we've lived here for 3 years, and you understand quite a bit. You pick up words here and there.
Well, I don't speak nearly at the level of Jocelyn, but I can get by between what I know in Portuguese, what they know in English, and a little bit of sign language to get by. And I go out every morning and walk along the shore and speak to the fishermen and the retired fishermen, and I did that a lot with my dog, although our dog Mac is back in the States. I tease Jocelyn that she's trying to learn Portuguese well enough to go sit in a cafe and argue with the old men about economic policy. I just want to be able to walk into a shop and not have the shop owner say, "Oh darn, here comes that American again with that weird accent that he's got."
Right. Right. Well, one of the biggest questions that's always on our minds as mature adults is the healthcare system. And, we have been programmed to believe that our healthcare system in the United States is the best in the world. And I also know that Medicare doesn't cover your healthcare overseas. So how do you manage your health and your expenses should you need medical care?
Yeah. Well, I'll start off with a statement, and then Jocelyn can kind of fill in probably some of the facts that I don't know. Prior to moving here, I was a huge person who campaigned against socialized medicine. That I thought that the worst thing you could do is have the government fully manage your health care. Now, I'll say I still believe that in a lot of ways, but I have seen this is a socialist country. I mean, they say it's not my opinion. I mean, they claim to be a socialist country, and that's because the people voted it to be socialist. They elect socialist leaders, not that there's some takeover or anything. And they have a socialized medicine healthcare system. And we've had good care under that program. We have a family doctor, and she is excellent. She's told us that she has 2,000 patients. And but a lot of them don't come to hers. But you still have more people that need health care than those that are getting in regularly to get it. Not by their choice, but sometimes you have to wait to see a doctor. We haven't had to wait a lot, but I think that the doctors here care about you very much, and when you can get in to see them, and as I said, we haven't had a terrible time, but we jump sometimes from the healthcare system to private individuals that aren't that expensive. And I'll let Jocelyn kind of take it from here, talking about the insurance and things like that. But I just wanted to kind of make that opening statement.
I agree with Brad. I lived in England for a couple of years and actually was very impressed with the health system there, and it's also socialized health. And in the United States, it's kind of a controversial subject. Here, as Brad said, we have a family doctor. She's excellent. It's actually a team, a nurse, doctor, and the admin, and they're very responsive. Sometimes it can take a while if you need something done that's not urgent. But if there's an emergency, the care is outstanding. It is phenomenal. We have friends who live here and they're actually from Boston, and he's become ill, and the care is better here than he would have had in the United States, as they were told by his family with a couple of doctors. We have a good hybrid going here. We go to private. We have private doctors. They're not expensive, and they take their time with us. Even in the socialized system, the doctors spend as much time as we need. And I know that in the States, our experience is that doctors are under the crunch. They can only spend a certain number of minutes with each patient. So in many ways, we've had better care here. Brad and I also have a private medical insurance here. And it's a good policy. For me, it's per year, $800, 800 euros actually. For Brad, he's a little bit older, it's 1,000 euros per year. I am keeping my insurance in the United States right now simply because I needed continuous coverage there. It's $800 a month for not very good care. So there's something wrong with the system in the States. We've been very pleased. When we first moved here, we weren't part of the socialized medicine system, and Brad had injured his neck, had a herniated disc, and we went to a private clinic, had an MRI done privately, not subsidized by the government, and it was $250, the equivalent. And that's not subsidized from the government. And I thought that would have been $3,000 in the United States. So something is broken there. So we've been very pleased with our care here, and there are, and I know this is true in other countries as well. You can buy private insurance, and it can help payments. I mean, the industry is not a business and industry in Portugal yet, like it is in the States.
So do you have to qualify? Do you have to establish residency in some way before you can qualify for subsidized healthcare?
We applied for residency when before we arrived, and we were granted it shortly after we arrived. And as soon as we were residents, we were granted all the rights of a citizen except voting in national elections. And they take that very seriously.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that kind of you wouldn't really know until you got here about Portugal, and probably the Azores even more, is that the government has been a very welcoming government. What they ask you to do is three things when you come here to start the process. You get a visa that gives you 4 months to do anything you're going to do. And that's 1 month longer than you would have with just without even having a visa. You can go 90 days in any Schengen area, which is essentially the European Union. But they want you to have enough money to live on your own so that they're reasonably certain you won't become a ward of the state.
Mm.
The second thing they want is no criminal background. So, I'm fortunate that the wild youth that I was in Aiken, South Carolina in the 60s, I'm fortunate that paper trail somehow hasn't followed since it was pre-internet. But, and then the third thing is that you've got to have some type of health insurance when you move here. Now, as soon as you get here, as Jocelyn said, and she kind of managed that whole process, getting our residency card. And the first year you had a year, and then the second year they gave you 2 years. And then just earlier in January, they sent us our card, and now it's good for 3 years. So we don't have to worry about even doing it. We don't have to worry about anything for 3 years. And we did it online. I mean, they basically look and say, has this Majors guy gotten arrested here? Or has he done anything that would suggest that we need to get him out of our country? And I have not. I'm much better behaved than I was as a teenager.
Well, that's a good thing, Brad. That's a good thing. Now, you guys, established residency, but you're still citizens in the U.S. So how does voting in our U.S. elections work? Do you only vote national? Can you still vote in the state where you moved from?
You vote. We vote in South Carolina, and the people down at County Square in Greenville are very, very easy to work with. We had an absentee ballots, and they sent them to us, and we fill them out, and we take a picture of them, and then we scan it back to them and sign them. I mean, there's a lot of security to it, but they're not regarding you at all really suspiciously. I mean, I don't know if maybe they remember us a little bit from paying a few house taxes and things like that down there. But the Greenville County is remarkably easy to work with and to vote.
Okay. So we talked at the beginning about, the whole transition of what you're going to do and how you're going to stay busy. And I understand you, Brad, are doing music there.
Sure. Yeah.
Would you talk a little bit about that? And then maybe Jocelyn can tell us what she's doing to stay busy.
Yeah. I've been playing around Greenville for about the last 20 years. And I played with a band called Dirty Martini that played a lot. And then I played in one called Jazz Romance. And at some point in about 15, Jocelyn and I took a trip down to New Orleans. And I really kind of fell in love for the second time with Dixieland. So we formed a band called Deep Dish Dixieland that we played for 4 years. And as we came up on the end of 18, when I was retiring, I told the band, I had talked to them about leaving at some point. So we played our last gig in November, December of 18. And then Jocelyn and I came here in 19. And I started looking for musicians here. And it did take a while. I found some very good musicians, but I just hadn't found exactly who I was going to work with. I have certain opinions about bands, so I've at many times played somewhat of a leadership role, and I just didn't find the right mix. About a year and a half ago, I did find a great singer to sing blues. Her name is Sal Pontus, and she sings blues like she was born in Mississippi. And she just got an amazing voice, low register, and she belts them out like the blues singers of the 30s.
Wow.
Well, so then after I got that going, my band, the Old Deep Dixieland, said, "Hey, if you're going to be, we're planning on being back in the U.S. a little more frequently," and that band wanted to get going again. So we added a great bass saxophonist. And now, so no matter where I am, the U.S. or here on San Miguel, I've got a band, that's been a lot of fun for me to take all of the energy that I used to spend in selling things or helping companies sell things and putting it into music. So I spend a lot of time with a various guitar in my hand or maybe a ukulele, and I'm learning to play an instrument here called the cavaquinho. And the cavaquinho was the instrument that the Portuguese sailor from Madeira took to Hawaii that the Hawaiians fell in love with. When they tried to build a cavaquinho, they ended up with a ukulele. And that's where the ukulele came from. So I'm playing sort of the grandfather of the ukulele, and I'm having a lot of fun with that.
And trying to book gigs. So you're using your sales skills for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. And what about you, Joss? What do you do? And it's not busy. It's what do you do to feel meaningful, to stay involved?
We always do seem to keep busy. Of course, I'm a groupie of his.
Right.
And we have many friends. Because we have more time, our social life has really expanded living here. We have a lot of expat friends from all over the world, not just from the United States, but we also have a lot of local friends. And one of the biggest activities we do, we hike and we walk. This island is very natural and beautiful. We're in the middle of the ocean and we have beaches. I mean, we walk out our front door and the marina's right there and the beach is right up around the corner, literally. The water's very cold, so we don't do a lot of swimming, we do a lot of looking. But we walk and hike, and we also, Brad, he thought in retirement he wanted to take it easy and not interact with people. He's going to just stay home and play with the dog and play music and read and hang out with me. So the first year he started a band and he started an international Rotary Club. So we're really busy with Rotary here also. Our big project right now is we are tutoring English to local folks who want to practice. I mean, we're not teaching grammar, textbook stuff, but so they can practice their skills. As a matter of fact, there's a local community college and we go in there. This Friday, I'm going to work with the receptionist students so I can be a customer and they can practice with me. And
fun.
It's been really fulfilling to do that. So yeah, we do keep
what a great.
When COVID settles down, we'd really like to travel more. This is a great launching point to visit Europe.
That sounds awesome. And so it's an international Rotary Club. Does that mean you have members from all over the world?
Yes. They label a club international when your language of the club is not that of the host country. So since we speak English in our club, they call us an international club. I mean, there are two clubs outside of Lisbon that speak French, and they're from a number of French residents, and they've been very successful clubs, but they're also labeled international because they speak French instead of Portuguese.
So
and the thing about teaching English, I a long time ago made a joke that I was going to teach every resident on San Miguel English so I wouldn't have to learn the difficult language of Portuguese. But the truth is that when English is the second language taught here after Portuguese. So Portugal and other European countries kind of recognize that English is going to be the international language in the future. It won't be French or it won't be Spanish, but it's going to be English here. And so they teach that in school. I think beginning maybe in kindergarten. In kindergarten, they start. So the chance of you running into someone under 40 who doesn't speak any English is very small. But there are people who still don't, or they didn't pay attention in school or whatever. And for those people, there's an expression people use called wearing rubber boots. So which means manual labor. So if you're wearing rubber boots, you're fishing, you're ranching, or you're gardening. You're farming. So that's great. We're a big exporter of beef to Brazil, and so there's good work doing that, but it's hard work. I think it pays reasonably well, but it's hard work. If you don't speak English, you aren't going to be able to get any job but those jobs. So we, Rotary sees it, and our district club in Lisboa gave us the idea, and because what we're doing, it kind of connects to Rotary's literacy, but it connects even more importantly to economic development. I mean, when people speak English here, they all of a sudden open up a lot of jobs and can tap into tourism, which is a big, big part of San Miguel.
Yeah. And I can see when Josh says, it really does give you this sense of meaning and purpose. It's a very fulfilling opportunity. That's cool. So my last question for you guys is about family. I said, the one thing that I think would hold me back is moving that far away from my grandkids. So how did you handle that, moving away from your sons who are still here in America?
Well, it's interesting. The folks we spoke to back in South Carolina, when we told them our plans, all of them talked about grandchildren because the grandchildren factor is so big. And fortunately, we aren't at that stage yet. Our sons are 23 and 26. Something very interesting, though, is that when we were living there and they were living with us or in school, they were so busy. They were working, going to school, they had friends, and they were out and about. When they came to visit us here, we had them for a week, their undivided attention, and it really was quality time. And when we go back there, they make a point of being with us, and we have quality time with them. And then in between, we're on phone calls, or you can do video calls, that sort of thing. So I've actually enjoyed that aspect of it. We see them more in that week than we did in 6 months in the States.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, we've told them each, whenever you want to come to the Azores, or I think in the future, maybe we'll take off for the mainland. We'll send you a plane ticket. All you have to do is say you want to come, and we'll get you here. And to have them for a week, Jocelyn's right. We did everything together. There weren't distractions. If they want to, bring a girlfriend, that works just fine. We've got something now that I think family and friends ought to love to come and see us and see what's happening in such a unique place like this. They call the Azores the Hawaii of the Atlantic. And, one of our boys especially was an Eagle Scout and just loves the outdoors. And he went hiking on days that even we didn't go hiking. He liked it so much. And I think, we'll always be there if they need us. And lately we've been going back more often to look after Josh's parents. But, as we told the boys, you just say you want a ticket and one will be there in a couple of days. And we would love to have them and anyone else come and visit. Although we can't buy the tickets for our friends. Only for our friends. Let me be very, very clear about that. We do not pay for tickets for our friends.
Oh, darn. I was about to send you an email and say, here's when I can be there. No, that's a great perspective, though. I did not even think about that. The unlimited time that you would have with them without the distractions of all of the other things that they're doing would be very valuable.
Yeah.
Let me, now you can email Brad, but not for a ticket, but you can email him with questions about what it's like living in the Azores and, any things that they've learned or challenges. He's happy to share that with you. His email address is B for Brad, P like Paul, Majors, MAJORS @gmail.com. So
Wendy, my middle name is Pinkney. Now, most people in South Carolina know that name, but whenever I've given it in other places I've lived, we end up having a 5-minute discussion about Pinkney. So that's why I said like Paul, but it's not Paul.
Okay. Well, and not everybody listening is from South Carolina, so we don't need to go into that big, long discussion. But but thank you, guys. This has really been informative. I've seen some comments of people that are saying, oh, I'm ready to go. So you shared a lot of really good information, and I do appreciate that.
Good. Well, we appreciate you, initially telling us that it looked like a story that your listeners and viewers would enjoy. We think it's a great life doing this, and in some ways wish we had done it sooner. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't wait too long. I would, if it feels like something you want to do it for 3 to 6 months and see what you think.
Yeah.
There's a good chance you'll like it.
That's a good suggestion. So I always like to explain who's coming next week. So on our next Monday show is really kind of a focus on what happens to your identity when you become the caregiver for somebody with dementia, particularly when it's your spouse. And my guest is Joanne Ellis, and she wrote a book. It's a raw, almost uncomfortable story of some of the anger and some of the frustration and some of the sense of loss that comes with losing this person who was your partner in life. And it also normalizes it. So I think it's a really important discussion. She is a funny and caring person, so it should be an interesting episode. And I hope all of you will join us or let other people know who you know in that situation that about the show so they can join us next Monday. I also like to remind you of our Facebook group. That is the group where you can join us for regular conversations about some of the things like Brad and Jocelyn talked about. You know, what do you do after retirement? How do you figure out what you're going to do for your day and find meaning? And so we have it's a closed community, right? So it's private. So anything that you share with the community, you're going to get support from that community. So if you're interested in becoming part of the Facebook group, drop me an email to wendy@heyboomer.biz, and I will be happy to send you an invite. Or if you just want to drop me an email and say hi to me too, I'm happy for that. So thanks everybody for tuning in today. This really has been a great show. And live with passion, live with relevance, live with courage, and remember you are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. My name is Wendy Green, and this has been Hey Boomer.